So we've created this channel because we enjoy heavy metal music, and we want to share. And we just want to talk with other metalheads about metal music. Now, it's not just the only thing we're going to be talking about. We're going to look at albums. We're going to have discussions about different aspects of metal. We're going to engage you and ask you to join us with our top 10s that we're going to do and the discussions that we're going to do. This is going to be geared towards more of our age group, so a lot of the bands we'll be talking about are probably going to be older for a lot of you if you're younger than us. We are in our 50s, so this is going to be set for people who are closer to our age. Hopefully everybody will enjoy this. Nobody's excluded. We just enjoy metal music, and we just want to share metal with all of y'all.
Very good.
Okay. So we're going to start today with what happened this week in metal. Eric?
Well, I just have rock and roll, so I didn't get all metal.
Well, that's not the homework assignment. That's not what our channel's all about.
Okay.
So,
well, I guess I'm going to be getting an F.
we're obviously starting on the right foot.
All right.
So, what's something? Well, I don't know. What do you got there? I got back in 1974, the California Jam happened this week. Earth, Wind and Fire, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, ELO. What a mix of bands that was. And how awesome would that have been to have been to a concert like that? I mean,
yeah,
great stuff. Back in 76, that's when High Voltage was released. The Ramones, their debut album came out. No? Okay, what about in the 80s? In April of 1980, Iron Maiden released Iron Maiden.
There you go.
Judas Priest, Breaking the Law, 6th album. I mean, what do you know?
Very good. Well, in 1977, Fleetwood Mac's Rumors goes to number 1 and stays atop the charts for 31 weeks. So I know that's not metal, but that's rock and roll.
It is.
64, the Beatles' 6th single, Can't Buy Me Love, broke the record for advanced single sales in UK when 2.1 million people pre-ordered it. Unsurprisingly, the record shot to number 1. Sorry, I can't remember all this stuff.
No, but... Okay. All right.
April 2nd, Elvis Presley played 2 concerts before 23,000 people at Make Believe Gardens in Toronto. Elvis only performed outside the U.S. 4 times in his career, and they were all in Canada.
Okay, so those aren't very metal things, but
no.
That's cool. White Zombie's 4th album came out in 95 in April, and also Agnostic Front, their 11th album came out.
Who?
Agnostic Front.
Never heard of him.
Well, that's a heavy metal band. So
apparently not.
Like your stuff. And that's what happened in this week in metal. And then there's that. We should have an applause.
All right. Well, I was going to do tour announcements.
All right. So, Eric, you said you've got some tour announcements to bring out?
Got tour announcements. AC/DC is back on tour for the first time since 2016. Nice. Billy Idol is with Joan Jett. Michael Monroe from Hanoi Rocks. We're going to be seeing him.
See that? That'll be rocking.
Angel, the 1970s glam group that Greg Jeffrey was in. So they're going to be coming down to the Token Lounge. Thinking about checking them out. Anvil with Midnight Hellion and comedian Don Jameson's going to be at the Machine Shop.
I wonder how that actually goes.
So we'll think about that.
Yeah. Skip the next one.
Pat Benatar.
No, skip that one.
Okay. Pantera with Amon Amarth.
See, now that would be something to see.
And Rod Stewart with Cheap Trick. So that's kind of an interesting combo there.
Not metal.
Not metal. Aldo Nova's metal.
Yeah.
He's got one hit.
He's good.
Alice Cooper as always, but I think he's going to be on the west side of the state.
Yeah, bummer.
And Ted Nugent, who isn't doing big tours anymore, he's just doing select shows. He said he's tired of living out of hotels. He's just doing a few shows here and there, so thankfully he's doing a few here in Michigan. One at Freedom Hill and Sterling Heights that we'll probably be attending.
You should be.
Yeah.
Very good. So that's a lot going on then coming up this summer like it usually is, so good things. So the next thing we're going to do is our album reviews.
Actually, I'll take that back.
Okay, now what are you doing?
New album releases. I've got 3 new CDs.
You're only talking about the ones that you bought?
Only talking about the ones I bought.
All right, very good. So screw everybody else.
That's right.
If you didn't buy them, we're not talking about it.
These are the new CDs that I bought.
Okay.
So, Brainstorm, Plague of Rats. So
Very
is that
nice.
one? Brainstorm, the German band. They've got the American singer, Andy B. Frank. Very tight, just a solid heavy metal band. I'm really getting into these guys in recent years. So they're one of those bands where it's like at this point now, I don't even have to check it out. I just buy it. I know it's going to be that good. All right, next one is Lethal X. Now, Lethal X is kind of interesting. They are half of Racer X, which was Paul Gilbert's old band. And so this has Jeff Martin, the singer, Harry Gosher, who was the original drummer before Scott Travis came, and then they've got a new guitarist and bass player.
Right.
Funny thing is, I'm not a big fan of Jeff Martin's vocals, and the big thing about Racer X was Paul Gilbert's guitar playing, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And so
is he on this album?
No. And so the funny thing is, though, is like the 2 young guys playing guitar and bass actually really shine. And so, good album. Still recommend it, but not a huge fan of Jeff Martin's vocals. And the last one is Robin McCauley's 3rd solo album, Spellbound. And for those of you who are fans of Robin McCauley, he sang with Michael Schenker for several years. Michael Schenker Group was called the McCauley Schenker Group during those years. Awesome singer, still has a great voice, great album. That's it.
All right. Very good.
All right.
Hopefully next time around, those of you that have released albums, we'll get them to Eric so then we can actually talk about them.
Send us free albums. There you go.
Okay, for now, our next segment here, we're going to review a couple albums that we both enjoy listening to, but however, not necessarily we both enjoy listening to. In that, I really like mine, he really likes his, but it didn't sound like we both really liked each other's. No. So here we go. Another thing about it that was kind of odd is these were both first albums for the bands that we picked, and we just picked these out of the blue when we were talking about doing this segment. There was no real thought to it, as you'll be able to tell, but here you go. So for me, Fistful of Metal by Anthrax. What I really love about the album is just the rawness of Anthrax itself. Unfortunately, it wasn't a very popular album from them, and they didn't do a lot of support to it after their first year tour. You won't hear a lot of the songs being played just because of how popular their next 2 albums became. However, really good album. It's the only album that you're going to have both the original bass player, Dan Lokler, and have Neil Turbin both on, as both of them left the band right after Lokler never made it to the tour, and after the first tour was over, Turbin was then removed from the band. So outside of that, good album. There is a remake, I'm 18, from Alice Cooper on there. I don't think that's the best songs on there. I really liked Metal Threshing Mad and Soldiers of Metal. Howling Furious was pretty good too. It's a decent album. I really like first albums because of how raw they are, and I think you get a better feel of the band because it's not being overproduced by the record companies. So, good album, worth listening to. What did you think?
Well, it's kind of interesting, and I was telling Andrew, I think this segment is actually going to be my favorite because he's having me listen to albums that I'm not familiar with, and I'm having him listen to albums that he's not familiar with. So, when Anthrax came on my radar, it was when I saw the video for I'm the Man on Headbangers Ball. And I saw these guys jumping around, acting goofy, and I'm like, who are these goofballs? And so I was like, they just didn't grab me. I didn't check them out until later on. I've got the greatest hits. And then I got into Joey Belladonna's voice, and I've got a couple of the newer albums. So I'm not a huge Anthrax fan. I like the newer stuff. I think Joey Belladonna's got a fantastic voice. And so I'm not real familiar with early Anthrax. And so when he picked this one and I checked it out, just like Andrew said, the album's raw. I like that part of it. And interesting enough, it's like there was like a little bit of thrash, but I noticed almost there was more new wabum in it, like new wave of British heavy metal, early Iron Maiden, early Saxon, Tigers of Pantang. It's like
So this is where this album really started thrash metal.
No.
No, it did. Whatever you might want to think, but if you go, that's when they started using, really, this word became popular to describe this kind of metal, was when this album came out.
Well, maybe the name, but I think a lot of people think that Kill 'Em All is the first thrash metal album.
Yeah, it could be. I'm just saying the word was associated with Anthrax when they came out with this album.
But getting back to my review on it, I like the music was raw, and like I said, I noticed similarities to new album style almost more than like what we know as thrash now. One of the things was Neil Turbin, and from what Andrew told me, my opinion is not like the popular one. The screeching, and then he just carried on these like screams, I think, for like too long, and it kind of distracted me from the music. Not a fan of Neil Turbin, and so
Is that like
I
a
think
personal
they,
attack or something?
had the right idea in getting him out of the band. Like I said, big fan of Joey Belladonna. I think he's got a fantastic voice, and so I thank Andrew for lending it to me to check out and stuff. And I'm sure I will listen to it once in a while, but if I'm gonna reach for Anthrax, I'm gonna be reaching for the Joey Belladonna years.
So pretty much every album after this
Yeah. Well, John Bush was there for a while.
small
Little
period,
while.
yeah. So what do you got for us, Eric?
All right, my album is the self-titled EZO album. Try and get the glare out of there. And EZO was a Japanese band that started out in Japan under the name Flatbacker, and they issued 2 albums under the name Flatbacker. They were almost like a cross between metal and punk, very like thrashy, punkish, fast tempo. And then they were discovered by Gene Simmons. He brought them to America, changed the name to EZO, and kind of like Americanized them a little bit to like American glam band, American hair band, that style. And how they first came on my radar is I saw the video for Here It Comes on Headbangers Ball, and I just loved it. It's like the song Here It Comes is so catchy, and I know Andrew actually just mentioned that kind of goes more with pop music, and it is. It's like 80s glam metal, hair metal. But that song Here It Comes just like grabbed me. I loved it. To this day, it's still one of my favorite songs. And I will say that the second half of the album is stronger than the first half. There's some great ones on here. Destroyer, fast-paced, big changes, Kiss of Fire, Desiree. Some people think that Desiree is almost like thrash metal. It goes so fast. The only problem is the first 3 songs, House of a Thousand Pleasures, Flashback, Heart Attack, and Mr. Midnight. Little slower pace, and as I was telling Andrew, it's like it has kind of like a choppy tempo where the music kind of starts and stops. I don't like that. I like a fast, guitar riff. And so I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 just because I love that song Here It Comes so much and a strong second half of the album. If it would have had a stronger beginning of the album, I would have given it a 10 out of 10. But but because of
That's crazy talk.
But because the first 3 strong songs are a little weaker, I'm giving it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah. See, no, for me, a 10 out of 10 on an album is going to be an album where every song on there is just awesome. And in this case, this album wasn't even close to that. I couldn't even get it close to an 8 out of 10 listening to this. I did have an issue with the way some of the strong structures were. It made it hard for me to get a flow through them. I disagree with Eric and think that the first part of the album was better than the second part of the album. I didn't particularly care for Kiss of Fire. As far as big changes, the best part to that song was the solo, in my opinion. House of a Thousand Pleasures, that had a Zeppelin riff in it. I didn't have enough time to go back and pull my I'm pretty sure it's off Physical Graffiti, that has the same licks in it that this one does. So that I got right away. Also on Here It Comes, there's also a part of that had a very Zeppelin feel to it, a lick that I could pretty much figure out which song it was coming from if I just took the time out to do so. I'm sure if you guys are familiar with it, you should be able to figure out what Zeppelin tunes they came from. Destroyer, I did like Destroyer. It kind of reminded me of a Judas Priest song, the way it moved. That's what came to my mind. I thought that I didn't like Mr. Midnight. I thought Flashback was a little slow. Mr. Midnight was just way too slow for me. I did like I Walk Alone and Destroyer. It was an okay album, but I couldn't give it 8 out of 10 horns up.
Wow, this is garbage. You actually like this?
I think that's why they never made it big, because it just wasn't that great of an album. If I'm looking at an 8 to 10, or an album that's going to give me 8 horns up, then it's going to be something that's going to have 6 or 7 really good songs on there, and not just an album there, even that you just said, it was kind of choppy in the way that the melodies went.
Yes.
So that surprises me that you're saying that and then giving it such a high mark. However, this is his opinion and his opinion only, right? So that's the best thing about this kind of thing. Let us know what you think about these albums, and let's continue conversation about it. Drop your comments. Let us know. We'll continue conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we're just guys that like to listen to metal, right? That's it. We like listening to albums. Some are good, some are bad, but chances are we're not going to pick bad ones to review. These are albums that we both enjoy listening to, and if you like either of these bands or haven't heard of these bands or these albums, pick them up and check them out. I mean, you can go on YouTube now and do all that for free. We own the albums. We prefer supporting our bands by buying the CDs.
T-shirts.
And the T-shirts. As you all see us wearing them on our podcast, and maybe at one point we'll even take you a tour on this mini record store that exists in Eric's basement. It's his CD collection, to just show you that how we do support the bands, and it is important for us to do what we can to help them, as well as we just enjoy listening to music.
I do want to say one more thing, though. Is like I told Andrew as I was listening to the Anthrax album, because of all of the screeching that Neil did, if I was the producer, I would have fired him during recording.
Which is, please don't hold that against Eric and his opinions about things. You'll see as the days go by, this is normal, and you just need to know how to read into that, okay?
I like what I like.
Well, okay.
All right, so
So
next...
the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our, what's called, That's Debatable. At this part of our cast, what we're going to do is discuss different items that we feel are important or affect us in our metal lives, and see what you might think. As we move along, we'll try and throw some of these out ahead of time so that you can put your comments on there, and we can bring up and read the comments as they pertain to it as well. And all the comments that we do receive, if they're worth reading or if they're like Eric's opinion, they may not be, then we'll share them with you so that, we can have continued discussion about what it is that everybody likes, as we know everybody has a different taste in it.
Right.
First thing we're going to discuss, it's a very popular one and very true to Eric's heart, is metal shirts.
What should be required on album metal concert T-shirts? So what I think
Eric,
is...
what do you think should be there?
All right, well, thank you, Andrew. They all need to be black. I mean, that goes without saying. All of them have to be black.
Me nodding is not necessarily an agreement. It's just not acknowledging that he's talking.
Well, if he's smart, he's agreeing. So, a skull or skeleton, some type of warrior, and maybe even a dragon. So the ideal concert T-shirt is black, has a Viking skeleton riding a dragon. So something
so all
along
of you
those
out there who are going to go on tour,
you got some ideas there,
right? I disagree with Eric. As you'll see, that was part of how we've developed our tastes, is having these kind of conversations. You can see I'm wearing a shirt that is not. There's no skeleton or dragon.
Well, that's
on
a
it.
warrior.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's a Greek warrior.
And I brought a couple examples as well.
Oh, a clown.
This is my Korn shirt. As you can see, there are no skulls, there are no warriors, and for most part, a lot of people are more scared of this clown than they are of any skeleton they'll ever see.
It's an evil clown.
It is an evil clown. So that's where are my examples, and then I have another one.
Oh, skeleton.
Now, this has a skeleton on it. However, I don't know if you can tell by the quality, this is green. It is not a black shirt. It's the last tour shirt that they came out with. when they came through here in Detroit, because we are from the Detroit area, is a green shirt.
So already it fails
me,
right there.
I don't agree with all the set things that are required. I like it to be hardcore in whatever sense that it is hardcore. Obviously, most of the shirts, if you guys know, going to shows are black. So I have all these black concert t-shirts. I think it would be cool to have some other colors to mix in with that. They can still be as hardcore. They can still have skeletons riding dragons, but they could be in different color shirts as well. And that would still be as hardcore as the examples I've presented with you today. However, I do have to agree with Eric. At least with the skeleton in the black, it definitely portrays a more hardcore atmosphere and effect. I don't necessarily need to have a dragon on everything, but the skeleton, I think, makes a big deal. We should have brought my Death Angel. Can I show you?
Yes.
One of the coolest shirts I have is a Death Angel rock shirt, and the back of it has got the moth with the skull in the body of the moth, and that's what really makes that moth hardcore. And that's my opinion, one of my favorite shirts, and I should have brought that here today to share with you all. Maybe that'll come up later on when we talk about that band.
Oh, absolutely. And Death Angel's actually become one of our favorite bands in recent years. We've
Yes.
kind of came across them
Late.
kind of late, but it's like we're big fans now. Love them.
Awesome move.
All right, what's the next topic, Andrew?
So the next thing we have here is
Oh, yeah.
something, once again, that we don't agree on, and that is heavy metal rock in Christmas songs. Me, not a fan of it at all. There isn't one song out there. Doesn't matter who put it out. It doesn't matter how great everybody thinks it is. There is not one Christmas song out there that I want to hear wailing with electric guitars and screaming people and just that's not Christmas to me. I want to hear my Christmas songs as Christmas songs. Doesn't mean any of them. It's not a put down on any of the songs. It just doesn't fit to my ear.
And I actually like it. It's kind of funny that we're friends because we like differ on a lot. But I actually like it. I like traditional Christmas music, but then I'm a fan of hard rock heavy metal. I think it's cool to get like a heavy metal version of like a Christmas song. Dokken did one. Twisted Sister did an entire Christmas album. I think it's fantastic. I love it. And there, of course, is the Merry Xmas CDs. There's several of them. And so they're all instrumental, but they're guitarists. Ted Nugent, Zakk Wylde, I mean, you name it. It's there's been several of them. I like them a lot. I like to throw them in once in a while. Thumbs up for Metal Christmas for me.
Yeah, it's a downer. So
Next one.
we'll see let us know what you think. So now, we're going to talk about something that's obviously debatable. And I think that this is one topic that we both kind of stand the same on. Yeah, but maybe for different reasons. We're going to find out here. Did the ballads destroy our 80s hair bands? At some point, everybody felt like they had to do one. And some were pretty good, but most were terrible. And we both like faster tempo music. That's why Iron Maiden is one of my favorite bands, is because of the tempo of their songs, and that's why I like that band, love that band so much. And that's what kills me about the rock ballads. It's you're not fast enough, and I don't want to hear about your dog dying and your girl running away with your truck and drinking all your beer and shit. I want it to be a hardcore. We want to rock. We don't, So for me, I think that the popularity of it all, and then everybody deciding that they had to do it, is what really kind of, I want to say ended 80s metal hair bands, but it definitely, I think, put a break on what was going on at the time. It really didn't, it could have been better without.
Yeah, and actually it's kind of funny. Yeah, we do both agree on this one. In my opinion, have there been a couple of good metal ballads? Yeah, but like Andrew, and I think that's one thing is like where we love going to concerts together, is because when we go to a concert, we want to rock out. It's like we want something high energy, loud guitars, screaming vocalist. It's like we want to have fun. We want something with a lot of energy, and a ballad just like sucks all of the energy out.
Right out of it, yeah.
And then to Andrew's point, there was that thing where it's like, I'm assuming it was like the record companies. that wanted all of the glam bands, hair bands, to put at least 1 or 2 ballads on each album because they thought it was popular. Did it help record sales? Maybe.
Some of them.
Yeah, and some of them got big. Home Sweet Home, Motley Crue's, like that was a big one. That was kind of cool. But in general, if we're up to me, no ballads in metal.
No.
So,
let's just not listen to those. There's a lot of other good tunes to listen to.
absolutely, you can rock out.
In fact, there's so many out there that we don't even get to hear them all. Right? So why waste your time? So Eric, why don't you start us off on the last topic we're going to discuss today, and that's, when bands, especially as most of the bands that we listen to as we get older and older, unfortunately, band people die. That's just a fact of life. And so, at what point is it no longer a band and now just one musician with a bunch of his buddies going on tour? Or
Tribute
at
bands.
what point can you just still say, hey, we're really this band, when really only one of you is still in that band?
No, and this was actually a good question. It's kind of hard to think about it because it's like, is the one, let's say for example, it's just one person. They might get away with like one person leaving the band and still keeping the same name. But how important is that one person? Is it the singer? Is it the lead guitar player? Well, then I think if it's those two people leaving, it's not the same band. I mean, I think you can get away with maybe the bass player or the drummer leaving and still call it the same band.
Eric said that.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's like other than like one unimportant person, like bass player or a drummer,
This is him now, not me.
you can keep the same name. But I think if you replace a singer or guitar player, the sound starts getting too different. Then you might want to call it something else. The John Corabi Motley Crue album. I didn't buy that album right away because there was no Vince Neil. And so it's like years later, I eventually bought it. And it's actually a very good album. But John Corabi's voice is completely different from Vince Neil's. John Corabi's got a more gruff voice. So it's like, is it Motley Crue without Vince Neil? And I think a lot of fans didn't feel that way. They didn't buy the record.
Right. So taking it one step further, though, is it not just one member that's leaving? What if there's only one member left? For example, two bands that we've seen, and one that we used to see a ton of times. It started our rocking season for like 5 years in a row, and that was Y&T. Now the only original member still around is the lead singer and the driving force, Dave.
Yeah.
So does that count as still him calling it Y&T because it's his band and he's the driving force of the band, right? Or what about Boston? But once again, the only original member is the guy who pretty much started the band. It was the driving force of the band.
Tom Schultz.
So is it still Boston? Or because of everybody else that's gone, is it no longer Boston? Because then you have to question, well, another band like Kiss. You got Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, the only two original members. But they're the driving forces of the band. So is it still Kiss?
Megadeth. Only Dave Mustaine.
Megadeth, here you go. Mm-hmm. Is it still Megadeth? Now it's Dave's band. So is it really Dave Mustaine and like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, where it's just him and his group?
Pretty much,
right?
yeah.
Or is it really a band? He didn't tour as Dave Mustaine. He toured as Megadeth.
Dave Mustaine and the Heartbreakers.
So what do you think? Is it still the band? Is it worth saying? Like Leonard Skinner, is there even an original member still in Skinner, or is it just family members that are now taking spots? Does that still count? How close do you have to be? Can anybody just pick up a name of a band that disbanded and start continuing on with it? Wouldn't think you could.
No.
So what does it take? Do you have to have all original members? We know people that won't go see concerts because of the lack of membership of the bands in the concerts. They'll say, well, that's no longer that band because so-and-so is not there, or there's only one person left, or only two out of a 5 or 6 piece, whatever type of band you're talking about.
I have a friend who is a Stone Temple Pilots Pilot fan, and just because Scott Weiland isn't in it anymore, he doesn't consider it Stone Temple Pilot. Now, to go with what you're saying, and I agree, they've got a new singer. They came through. That was the first time I saw Stone Temple Pilots. I thought
they were good.
I thought it was cool hearing those songs live.
Yes.
But when you have somebody, again, the singer, it's like, you know, take the original singer away, is it Stone Temple Pilots? I enjoyed the concert. I thought it was cool. I got to hear those songs live, but is it the same band?
3 or 4 of the members are there.
Yeah.
So is it still Stone Temple Pilots, even though your frontman's gone?
Linkin Park. Chester Bennington, who I thought was a fantastic singer, and now they got a female singer, so she's not going to sound anything like Chester, and they're getting a little bit of a backlash because that's what some people are saying is Linkin Park should have changed their name.
Right. And then, of course, one band that did make it was like Van Halen. David Lee Roth, one of the greatest frontmen out there, leaves the band.
Yes.
And then Sammy Hagar comes in, and it's a little different a sound. It wasn't as, I would say, hardcore. I think it got a little more poppy and melodic.
Yes.
They still had good songs and put out good albums, but it wasn't the same.
No.
But Sammy is an awesome frontman, as he proved in Montrose, and then moving on onto his own, and then being a part of Van Halen, and then once again moving on onto his own. I mean, does that mean Van Halen was no longer Van Halen when David was gone?
I think a lot of people call him Van Hagar. I mean, that's not what was on the albums, but a lot of people call it Van Hagar.
Because it wasn't David.
It's not the same band.
It's not the same band, right? So what do you think? Is there bands out there that you would like us to talk about that maybe you think that should be mentioned? Do you have an opinion about it, or do you just not care? You just like listening to the music regardless who's playing it? I mean, because at what point does it become a cover band? Because, hey, I'm one of the guys that doesn't like going to see cover bands. I want to see a band play its original music. I understand a lot of people get out, that's how they get started, is doing covers, and I don't have a problem with that, but if I'm going to be paying money to see a band play, I would prefer it to be their own original writings as opposed to, you know, rehashing every other. Because I don't have a problem with a band covering a tune, because most bands cover somebody's music at some point. You can pull an album up and say, they didn't write this song, right? So everybody does a cover tune, but do you turn into a cover band when you lose all your members except one, or do you have to have no original members and then you're a cover band? I mean, at what level is that? Are you no longer that band?
Right. Comment below and let us what you think.
All right. So that's everything that we have to talk about tonight, with being our first episode. We know there are some bumps and bruises on the road. We are not technically talented people by any means. Once again,
this is not a Steven Spielberg production by any means.
This is much better. This is much better. So, let us know what we can improve on. Obviously, we know we got a lot to improve on, and we hope that you will find, as we will find, that this gets easier and easier as the days go by, and we're going to be better at it, and it won't be as raw as the first albums or as bad as EZO's first album. But until we come back and see you next week or in a couple of weeks, we'll be dropping these. No, you know what? We're going to be doing this as a weekly thing. They should be coming out on the Mondays. So look for us coming out on our next episode. And until then, rock on.
Stay metal. I think this went about as good as the first Anthrax album.
This was better than that EZO album.
No.